They were more than twins. They were inseparable, a bond so deep, so essential, that one was often called protector and the other the protected. Their parents thought they had witnessed the strongest form of love on earth. They were wrong, because one morning, that protector stood over his sister's body, holding an Air Force survival knife, with just 5 terrifying words. "I thought it was a dream. Can a perfect act of love turn into a perfect murder? Or is he telling the truth? If you kill while you are sleeping, are you still a killer?" This is the story of Benjamin Elliott and the dark truth that lives beneath the surface of sleep. Every home is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where the outside world stops and love, safety, and silence begin. But on one quiet night in a suburban home near Katy, Texas, that safety was completely destroyed. The crime was simple, brutal, and utterly impossible. In the early hours of September 29th, 2021, a 17-year-old twin named Benjamin Elliott walked into his sister's room. It was a path he had taken thousands of times before. But on this morning, he carried a knife, and he used it to stab his twin, Meghan Elliott, while she slept. What followed was a moment of panic terror, captured on a phone call that is still hard to hear. "I just killed my sister," the teenage boy confessed to the emergency operator. "Oh my God, I thought it was a dream." This is one of the unbelievable scenarios at the heart of this story. Welcome to the True Crime Cave. This is a place where we turn over every stone, shine a light on the darkest mysteries, and dive deep into the unsettling truth behind the world's most impossible crimes. If you're ready to join the ultimate investigation into the human mind, you've found your community. Hit subscribe, and let's uncover the secrets together. Benjamin and Meghan were more than siblings. They were twins, 2 halves a whole, described by everyone who knew them as best friends. There was no fight, no argument, and no motive that police or prosecutors could ever find. Can you imagine a bond stronger than that between twins? What does it take for a perfect, loving relationship to shatter in the most violent way possible? If you woke up standing over your best friend with a knife, what is the first thing your brain would try to tell you? Hold on to that feeling of impossible disbelief, because that is where our painful investigation begins. To understand the sheer impossibility of this case, you must first understand the world that was shattered. The Elliott family was a bastion of middle-class stability in the heart of Katy, Texas. This was not a fractured home. It was a functioning unit built on routine and shared experience. The financial anchor of the family was Katy Elliott, who served as a senior manager for the Girl Scouts of America, a detail that speaks volumes about the family's dedication to structure and community involvement. Supporting this was Michael Elliott, a devoted stay-at-home dad, whose presence ensured the twins had consistent guidance and attention through their complex teenage years. Their oldest daughter, Elizabeth, had recently moved off to college, leaving the twins as the final pair in this home. This change introduced a profound sense of last times, the last summer, the last semester, the last peaceful nights under one roof. The twins themselves were an exquisite study in contrast and completion. Meghan Elliott was a sensitive, artistic soul. Living with a diagnosis of autism, she often found the external world overwhelming. But she was finding her voice, not just at home, but on a global stage. She channeled her energy into creativity, managing a YouTube channel where she would post art and original content for the world to see. She was blossoming, using her art as a bridge to connection, and her brother was the one person who always understood her wavelength. Benjamin Elliott was her intellectual anchor, quiet, deliberate, and focused. He possessed a logical, structural mind of an engineer. He was not only her twin, but by his own admission and the affirmation of his father, he was her protector. He was the stable ground she could always count on. This dynamic created a powerful, closed circuit of mutual reliance that friends and family described as beautiful. They were touring different colleges, preparing for a separation that was only months away, yet that bond seemed unbreakable. The lack of a motive is not just a missing piece of evidence. It is a defining feature of this tragedy. Every single person, from family, friends, to lead investigators, confirmed they found no animosity, no jealousy, and no conflict between the twins. They were still close enough that an older friend from a slumber party years before would recall Benjamin, even as a small boy, sleepwalking. This family was equipped with camping gear and knife collections. They were immersed in a culture of self-sufficiency, but they were utterly unprepared for the silent, internal threat lurking in the deepest corner of their peaceful home. Let's dissect this picture of perfection. When one child is perpetually defined as a protector in a relationship with sibling, does that role become an unbearable weight over time? Could Benjamin's fierce, innate sense of responsibility mask an unconscious exhaustion or a resentment he was incapable of acknowledging while awake? And how does a family, devoted to community and support, cope with the knowledge that the instrument of their daughter's death was a gift, a symbol of the family's shared love for the outdoors? Do you believe a perfect, loving relationship can crack invisibly under the pressure of growing up? Is it more disturbing to believe a family is hiding a secret motive to save their remaining son, or to accept that there was no motive at all, meaning this violence emerged from the void? The violence that tore through the Elliott home didn't begin with a fight. It began with a gift. The Elliott family loved being outdoors. They loved camping and collecting survival gear. This hobby meant their home held many knives and tools. On the night of September 28th, just hours before the attack, Benjamin and his father, Michael, were bonding over a video game. A military knife appeared on the screen. Michael, the stay-at-home dad, decided to surprise his son. He went and got the real thing, an Air Force survival knife, and gave it to Benjamin. It was meant to be a symbol of trust, a tool for their shared love of survivalism. It was a tool of protection. But the sad and unbelievable part was that it became the murder weapon. Michael Elliott would later carry the heavy burden of that decision, saying he knew the tragedy wouldn't have happened if he hadn't given Benjamin that knife. But at that moment, it was just a regular night in a good home. Benjamin took the knife to his room, feeling grateful to have received a new gift from his father. Benjamin was scrolling on his phone for hours. This is an important detail. The phone records show that Benjamin was awake and online well past midnight. He was texting, scrolling, and living the normal life of a teenager. Then, around 2:30 to 3 a.m., a 24-minute gap to when he called 911 after the scary incident has happened, his phone went dark. This 24-minute gap in phone activity is the black hole at the center of the case. For the defense, this is the exact moment Benjamin fell into a deep, destructive sleep state. For the prosecution, it's the moment he decided to act. We don't know if he was asleep, staring at the ceiling, or thinking. The only thing we know is that when the next event happened, it was violent. At 4:40 a.m., the peace was shattered. The chilling sounds of a teenage boy in total panic were recorded by a 911 operator. Benjamin was the one who called. He didn't try to hide what he'd done. He immediately confessed, "I just killed my sister. Oh my God, I thought it was a dream." Benjamin told the police he woke up suddenly in Meghan's room. He said he was holding the knife, and his twin sister was bleeding. He claimed he immediately pulled the knife out and then, in a desperate attempt to save her life, he grabbed a pillow to press against the wound and stop the bleeding. He woke his parents, who rushed to the scene. When police arrived, they found Benjamin in a state of absolute horror. He was kneeling next to Meghan, trying to give her CPR. He was crying and broken. On the police body camera footage, Benjamin's first words to the officers weren't a defense, but surrender. "I don't deserve respect. I killed my sister." The 24-minute gap is the key. Is that time enough for a deep, sudden sleep to happen, giving Benjamin the sleepwalking defense? Or is it enough time for a moment of quiet, conscious planning? If he were truly sleepwalking, how did he manage to pull a knife out, get a pillow for aid, and dial 911 with such speed and apparent focus? Think about the confession. "I just killed my sister. I thought it was a dream." Is that the sound of a truly innocent person who just realized the horror? Or is it the desperate first explanation of someone who knows they committed an impossible act? This is the central choice the jury had to make. Police had a confession and a bloody knife. They had a victim stabbed twice in the neck. But they had the biggest problem a murder case can have. They could not find a motive. This huge missing piece of the puzzle opened the door for one of the strangest and rarest legal defenses in the world: sleepwalking. Benjamin's lawyers argued that the person who stabbed Meghan was not Benjamin Elliott, the loving twin. They claimed it was a dangerous, unconscious force commanded by the deep waters of his sleep. This defense is legally known as non-insane automatism, meaning he did it, but he wasn't in control like a machine. The defense's argument that Benjamin was not in control of his body is known in the courts as non-insane automatism. It is a risky, rarely used defense, but it is not unprecedented. The law has, in specific, shocking instances, agreed that the sleeping mind can commit murder without the conscious person being held responsible. To understand the pressure on the jury, you must know about the most famous successful sleepwalking case in modern legal history. In May 1987, 23-year-old Kenneth Parks was a devoted husband and father-to-be in Toronto, Canada. He was under immense stress due to unemployment and crushing gambling debts. Early one morning, Parks got up from the couch where he had fallen asleep. He then did something absolutely horrifying. Parks drove his car 23 kilometers, about 14 miles, to the home of his in-laws. He used the key they had given him to enter the house. He then violently attacked both his mother-in-law and his father-in-law, using a tire iron and a kitchen knife. His mother-in-law, Barbara Woods, died after being stabbed 5 times. His father-in-law survived. Immediately after the attack, covered in blood, Kenneth Parks drove himself directly to a police station, walked in and told officers, "I think I just killed 2 people." He was utterly confused and reportedly showed no awareness that he had severed tendons in his own hands during the struggle. Parks claimed he had no memory of driving, entering the house, or the brutal attack. His defense team presented 5 neurological experts who testified that Parks had a history of sleep disorders and was suffering from extreme stress. They argued that his body was operating on autopilot, a sleepwalking episode. The Canadian Supreme Court ruled that sleepwalking qualified as non-insane automatism because Parks' actions were involuntary. The jury acquitted him of both murder and attempted murder. He was a killer, but not a criminal. The case of Kenneth Parks is the nightmare scenario for any prosecutor. If a man can drive 14 miles, find a tire iron, stab his family, and walk free, then what does that say about Benjamin Elliott? Parks drove a vehicle, navigated the dark, and carried out a complex, multi-stage attack. Benjamin simply walked across a hallway. This successful acquittal proves that a jury can believe the sleepwalking defense. But the crucial question remains. If the law accepted the shocking, violent defense in the Parks case, Why did the jury struggle so much with the story of the quiet, loving twin? The answer lies in the tiny, damning details of prosecution found in Benjamin's own home. The whole case came down to the testimony of one man, sleep expert Dr. Gerald Simmons. He became convinced that Benjamin was telling the truth. After detailed sleep studies, the doctor concluded that Benjamin fell quickly into slow-wave sleep, the deep phase where parasomnias like sleepwalking happen. Dr. Simmons called the event a perfect storm. He pointed to Benjamin's sleep deprivation from staying up late on his phone, the stress of the upcoming college separation, and the terrible luck of the knife being next to his bed. The doctor testified that Benjamin acted fully without thought, like a robot. He didn't do this voluntarily. There was no motivation. The defense strengthened this idea by showing the jury the family history. Benjamin's older sister and great-aunt both testified that sleepwalking was a real issue in their family. The court heard of one event where Benjamin was found completely asleep, yet sitting up and eating a donut. But can a person go from eating a donut in their sleep to committing murder? Let's look at the medical argument. Do you believe a person, fully controlled by a deep sleep disorder, can manage to find a specific weapon, walk to a separate room, and deliver 2 precise stab wounds? Is that an involuntary action, or does it take a level of conscious effort? Think about your own experiences. Has anyone watching had severe insomnia or done anything crazy while in their sleep, like waking up in the garage with no memory? If the sleepwalking defense is accepted, it means this was a truly random act of violence. Which scenario is more terrifying? A loving brother with a hidden motive, or an innocent son whose own mind tried to kill him? For the defense, the case was simple: a terrible accident caused by sleep. But for the prosecutors, led by the Harris County District Attorney's Office, Benjamin's story was just too neat, too convenient, and full of details that suggested consciousness and intent. They struggled to find a motive, but they believed the evidence, the physical fact of crime, told a story of intentional murder. The prosecutor's main job was to prove that Benjamin was awake. The first major crack in the sleepwalking defense was found on Meghan's body. Benjamin claimed he had only stabbed his sister once with a knife. But the medical examiner found something very different. Meghan had suffered 2 separate, deep wounds to her neck. Why does this matter? For the prosecution, a single wound could maybe be explained as a random, sleepwalking thrash. But 2 distinct wounds suggest a focused effort, a repeated, intentional act. It means the attacker had to pull the knife out, readjust, and plunge it in a second time. That level of careful control, the prosecution argued, is simply not possible for someone lost in the chaos of a deep sleep cycle. Next, the prosecution turned to the scene itself. Benjamin told police he grabbed a pillow to press against Meghan's wound after he realized what he'd done in an attempt to save her. But the prosecutors had a different theory based on a forensic oddity. There was surprisingly little blood spatter on the walls or the sheets around Meghan's head. If she had been stabbed twice, bleeding heavily, and then woken up screaming, the room should have been covered in blood. The prosecution argued that the pillow was used during the attack, not after. They claimed Benjamin used the pillow to muffle Meghan's screams or cover her face while he attacked her. This, they stated, was not a rescue attempt by a horrified brother. It was a conscious effort to silence the victim by a cold-blooded killer. Did you think the pillow was used to save the room from blood spatter, or was it used to silence a desperate scream? This thought process forces us to choose. Was it a tool of love or a tool of murder? Since they couldn't find a clear motive, prosecutors focused on Benjamin's behavior in the interrogation room and the language he used. The police interviewed Benjamin for hours, and the prosecutors later told the jury that he did not show the level of shock, guilt, or remorse you expect from a loving brother who had just accidentally killed his twin. They painted his demeanor as flat, calm, and suspiciously controlled. This was the human evidence that spoke against his innocence. But the most damaging words came when he was asked about his phone. When detectives asked where the phone was, Benjamin reportedly referred to his own family home as the crime scene. The prosecution slammed this detail. They asked the jury, what normal, panicked 17-year-old would use such precise, cold legal terminology? They argued that this language proved he was conscious, aware of the legal gravity of his actions, and trying to handle a situation like a suspect, not a victim of a sleep disorder. The defense tried to say he just heard the police use the phrase, but the damage was done. Does a lack of tears mean a lack of guilt? Was Benjamin just in shock, or was he calculating? Do you think referring to one's home as a crime scene sound like the honest words of an innocent boy, or the careful language of a person fully aware of the violence they had committed? The jury faced an impossible choice. They had heard Dr. Simmons, the sleep expert, testify that Benjamin acted without thought, confirming the family's belief. But they had also seen the police footage. A boy who used cold legal language like crime scene, and they heard the forensics arguing that 2 stab wounds were too precise for a chaotic nightmare. For days, the 12 men and women were trapped between these 2 crushing realities. Was it fair to punish a boy for what his sleeping brain did? But was it safe to let him walk free after such a violent, deadly act? The atmosphere in the deliberation room was one of total crisis. They had to decide the truth of a nightmare. Finally, the jury returned. They did not find Benjamin Elliott guilty of first-degree murder. That would have meant they believed he had planned to kill his sister. Instead, the jury reached a painful compromise designed to fit the facts they could not ignore. They found Benjamin guilty of felony murder. What does felony murder mean here? It means the jury rejected the defense that Benjamin was fully innocent because of sleepwalking, but also rejected the prosecution's core theory of planning and hate. Instead, the jury essentially said, you were awake enough to commit an incredibly dangerous act that led to your sister's death, even if you didn't mean to kill her. It was a verdict that tried to hold Benjamin responsible for the act, without finding him guilty of the motive. The courtroom drama peaked during the sentencing phase. This was where the raw grief and desperate hope of the family truly played out. The prosecution demanded 40 years in prison, arguing that the horror of the crime demanded a long punishment, regardless of the motive. The defense begged for leniency, asking the judge for a sentence as light as 5 years, pleading that Benjamin was not a threat to society. Then came the extraordinary moment. The jury, unable to settle the deep conflict in their hearts, sent a note to the judge. They asked him to be light and merciful with the sentence. They felt that Benjamin was a good person caught in a unique tragedy. The judge listened to the overwhelming evidence of love between the twins and the jury's plea. He issued a final sentence of 15 years in a Texas state prison. In that moment, Michael and Kathy Elliott lost their son, Benjamin. The same day, they confirmed their loss of their daughter, Meghan. They left the courtroom as a family who had paid the maximum price for a mystery no one could solve. Benjamin, now an adult, continues to assert his innocence from behind bars, claiming he is a victim of a medical condition, not a crime. He will be eligible for parole in 2032 when he is 28 years old, a life forever marked by the actions of his sleeping self. The case of Meghan and Benjamin Elliott remains a ghost story, haunting the quiet streets of Katy, Texas. The law has delivered its verdict, but the mystery of the human mind remains unsolved. After hearing every detail, the 2 stab wounds, the cold crime scene comment, the pillow theory, and confirmed science of sleepwalking, where do you stand? Was the jury right to convict Benjamin of felony murder, confirming that he was conscious and accountable for his actions? Or was the verdict a profound miscarriage of justice, punishing a boy for a crime committed by a sleeping brain? If you were on the jury, would you have voted guilty or not guilty? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this deeply disturbing investigation into the death of Meghan Elliott and the mystery of her brother, Benjamin. The most terrifying true crimes are not those solved by a clear motive, but those that leave us haunted by the darkness inside the human mind. The truth about that night is still hidden somewhere between a nightmare and a conscious, unforgivable act. Don't let the mystery end here. If you want to dive deeper into the unsolved corners of human nature, if you demand justice and seek to uncover the hidden truth in every case, then hit that subscribe button. Join our community of detectives. We'll keep peeling back the layers of the impossible, one chilling story at a time. Until next time, stay curious.